Welcome to Business Beyond the Mic, where we join Carly Van Heerden, CEO and founder of We Edit Podcasts. Together, let's uncover the art of podcasting.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Business Beyond the Mic. I'm your host, Carly Van Heerden. Today on the show, we welcome Laura Patrick and Todd Adamson. Laura and Todd are the hosts of the Next Page podcast, where they explore the impact of trauma with experts, celebrities, and influential people to discover what we can do as individuals and as a society to heal and overcome. Outside of the podcast, Laura is an attorney, entrepreneur, and marketing specialist. Today, Laura is the co-owner and the chief marketing officer of Bay Street Beer Garden, a restaurant in Charleston, operating partner of Patrick Properties Hospitality Group, and an executive producer and in-house counsel for Four Corners Productions. Todd is a multi-talented actor and singer and co-founder of Four Corners Productions. And as a vocalist, Todd has shared the stage with numerous Grammy Award-winning recording artists such as Boyz II Men, Martina McBride, Leah Michele, and Joss Stone. He currently tours internationally as a solo artist with various symphonies and concert venues. During our conversation, Todd and Laura share their podcasting journey with us and why their initial goal was to unite people during an immense time of division during COVID. They also share the importance of putting out a great quality product and taking such care when producing your podcast. From there, we dive into just how to deal with those inevitable haters or keyboard warriors in order to pave the way for your guests to come onto the show and share their powerful stories. In fact, they remind us to shake off the unhelpful comments and to continue to stay true to your mission, doing the work that helps countless of other people. Laura and Todd will quickly become near and dear to your heart because of all the incredible experiences that they share. So let's get into the conversation. Laura and Todd, welcome to Business Beyond the Mic. It is such a joy to have you on the show today.
We are just so thrilled. Thank you so much for having us.
So happy this morning.
Honestly, we've been having the best conversation before the recording. So, we have to jump in now. Otherwise, we're all here smiling about things that the listeners
will be here all day.
Yeah. They've missed a lot. So sorry, guys, but hopefully we can make up for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, why don't you guys start us off by telling us a bit more about yourselves, your business, your brands, and your podcast?
Okay, well, I'll go first, I guess. I personally am a business owner. I own a bar and restaurant in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm also an attorney. Also work for my family's company, which is an event company. So a lot going on, but obviously also a podcaster. Todd and I are old friends from yesteryear. Essentially, we know each other from childhood and reconnected during COVID and decided that we both wanted to do a podcast and build. He had already started building a production company. And so I really wanted to be a part of it. And he also wanted to be part of it. So we kind of joined forces on that. It's a little bit of its own brand. Next Page podcast, we've kind of made its own thing. So it sticks out. One is not speaking for the other, but it is definitely like the baby of Four Corners Productions. So yeah, that's kind of like our brand for this is mental health and helping others. And I'll let Todd actually speak now. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, so I'm an actor, singer, producer. I was in New York for 15 years, did some Broadway national tours. I travel now across the world. I go to symphonies and cruise ships with my own concert. So just kind of living that artist dream, living the dream, literally. And then Laura and I over COVID had, we'll get into later why we actually, decided to, what inspired us to launch the podcast. But we reconnected during COVID, and she had actually said, I'm really thinking about doing a podcast. And I said, well, I have a production company, and we sat for like 8 hours and just like caught up for the longest time and realized we had so many similar experiences, like life experiences that revolve around mental health. So we both thought it was like this is kind of a dream scenario. And then we sort of, jumped in head first.
Yeah.
Just dove in. to the podcast world.
That's the only way to do it, right? I mean, you're never going to get started unless you jump in.
Oh my gosh, so true.
Well, you guys have such diverse backgrounds. And I mean, obviously the base of it sounds like it was friendship and the yesteryear experience with each other through life. But what inspired you to then eventually say, yeah, let's do this. This podcast is what we're going to do next.
Well, I mean, just kind of, piggybacking off of what Todd said was we met at my restaurant. He had been in LA, so we were living on kind of in opposite worlds of COVID, the COVID experience where, LA was completely shut down. Charleston was much more open. I'm fairly positive that's one of the reasons Todd came to visit was to escape the oppression of everything in LA. But once we started talking, we hadn't really caught up in like 10 years. And as we talked, it was like we both realized we were had been through or going through divorces, just some traumatic kind of experiences from those divorces. I had lost a lot of family members during COVID, not from COVID, but during COVID, and generally just been through just so much in such a short period of time. And Todd literally looked at me and was like, Laura, I would know none of this from your Facebook or from social media or anything, even a casual conversation. And I think a big part of that was kind of a light bulb of well, we should all be talking about this, especially COVID. At that time, it was fascinating to me that I felt like people weren't really focused on the psychological aspects of how that was going to impact the world and impact people personally. And so that led kind of to both of us being we really wanted, as Todd said, I already wanted to do a podcast in general. I just really love the medium, but that was kind of our brainchild, that we would kind of expose the things that people really kind of want to keep hidden and or don't want to necessarily scream from the rooftops, but that we think is healthy to talk about. I mean, to talk about going through that, talk about going through COVID specifically, and then it just expanded to pretty much any kind of trauma. And that's kind of where our launching point.
Right. We came up with, because we were trying to figure out what, the basis of our show, I think, is we always try to go back to hope and turning the page on trauma. So that's how we came up with Next Page, because it's you've dealt with this moment, because COVID was truly a collective trauma throughout the whole world. And so, when Laura said, at that time, a lot of people started talking about it more now, but at that time, nobody was talking about how difficult it was going to be to return to normal life. And, we sort of all lost 2 years there where it was a little insane. But we both went through some very, personally, some very similar experiences, specifically with, not necessarily, our ex-spouses, but just relationships in general. We have been through some borderline personality disorder of narcissism. And so we really kind of wanted to blow the roof off of that. And so our third guest was Tina Swithin, who Brooke Shields had actually talked about her on, I believe, the Today Show. And, overnight she, gained 40,000 followers and became this sort of spokesperson for narcissistic abuse, especially within the family court system. And so we have, anyway, that was sort of our third show. And it's just mental health, I think we found is such a powerful niche, and especially in the podcast market. And we're so passionate about it. And so, we every time we get off of a call with somebody, I don't think we've ever done a podcast where we both haven't learned something new, where it's enriched our lives and we can directly implement it into our current circumstances. So I think that's why we do it. I mean, we say it all the time that, I don't want to speak for you, Laura, but we say it all the time. This is such a cathartic experience when we get off those calls.
Yeah. And I think also just as far as the inspiring part, I think we both kind of realized just from the 8 hours we're sitting there, we obviously knew each other before, but that we have a rapport, that we have different perspectives, but that ultimately, like Todd said, it's a very much an idea, a hope that this is not the end, that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And that was a big motivator, was to connection. And we thought too, at that point, that was very much missing from the world as a whole. So I think that we've really embraced that. And that's kind of our whole inspiration for this.
No, I absolutely love that. And I've heard it from so many podcasters that they either start out by wanting to have other people feel less alone, or as they're going through their podcasting journey, they're realizing what they're sharing is helping those in their industry, the listeners and everybody exactly feel less alone. So it's just, oh, wow, impactful. And yeah, I just commend you guys for doing what you're doing. And I think it's so helpful and so inspiring to see just what you've done so far with all of this. But now, you're going along. Things look like it's running smoothly. You guys have your groove. You've got incredible guests, like this host of guests in your past, celebrity power couples, congressmen, all these things. But what were some initial fears or obstacles that you faced before you launched this successful podcast?
Well, I'd say the biggest fear was really just that no one would listen, that we would.
Is this thing on?
Yeah, that we've put in, because we really wanted to put out a quality podcast, like out of the get-go. We didn't want to just come in and it be kind of this rinky-dink operation. And Todd has so many people that he knows that are so talented. Mm-hmm. So we had a composer come up with our music with all these different little versions for intros and outros. We had, I've got this massive whiteboard where we had all the entire show, how is it going to be set up?
The structure, all that
structure, stuff. The basically all of the guests, getting them prepared. It was definitely just like anything that you kind of throw yourself into. It was a learning experience. I don't think we used one thing other than our mics that we used initially. But I think a big, for me personally, was that this thing that we had put so much effort and love into would just go into the ether. But at the end of the day, Todd always says this, is if we can help one person, then it's worth it. So that has overtaken my fear. But I'd love to hear what Todd's biggest fear was.
I'm in the exact same boat as you, Laura. We were afraid. I think we were both afraid that, oh gosh, we're putting out this quality content. We just hope it resonates, because that's the whole thing. If we weren't resonating with our our community, then, which is growing so, we're so lucky. We're growing pretty quickly now. At first it takes a hot minute. One of the guys who does a really, really successful podcast on Forbes podcast. What is his? I can't remember his name right now.
Joe Paradilla.
There. He gave us some great advice, about, he was basically like, you just got to stick with it. You got to stick with it for, give it a year, and
he said 1,000 shows.
1,000 shows. Yeah. He said 1,000 shows. Oh, yeah. And now we're still on we're not even at 50.
Yeah.
We're just so, but in 50 shows, we have definitely, I think we've learned so much, but the fear was more about, working so hard to put out a quality product and it just not being the beat, but apparently it has resonated with a good amount of people. We've got people listening to us across the world.
It's crazy.
Because we can see the analytics and we can see where people are, some people in Africa are listening to our podcast and what the hell? So, so that's
that, or cool. Their internet just routed through there. We don't know, but it seemingly, I will say, I think that was a really big fear too, is that we also, we don't come into it with an agenda, but we're very open. We're very progressive. And I think a fear that I quickly kind of passed was, well, is this because we have so many people from the LGBTQ plus community, because we have people that are very open, the Congress have Joe Cunningham on, who's a Democrat. Are we going to lose listeners because of that? And I think at the end of the day, it's just well, if you're not into that and you're not into the growth aspect of it, then I guess we're just not your cup of tea. And that's, I've gotten over that at least.
Yeah, I have too. I think we sort of just, you hear it, when people say, ignore the haters, just keep doing what you're doing. And that's sort of what we've sort of done. We haven't had too many haters, but we do get some conservatives that get real. That these keyboard warriors, they get really, what's the word?
Oh man, Willem, we had this incredible man who's also a drag queen, and he has been through so much in his life. Like his story is so powerful, but when we put out even just the advertising for it, the nastiness that came from people of just like, oh, this person, you guys are predators. Like it was kind of insane. And you have to just remember to like shake that off, like almost like don't read the comments. Like it doesn't even matter. But it was, that's probably the strongest that we've gotten. And that definitely troubled me. But and I think part of the reason it troubled me was because the point of this whole podcast was to try to unite people because it felt so divided during COVID, especially with our president. I know you're in Canada, so I don't know how much of it you had were susceptible to. But there was a lot of division, and our whole idea was to bring people together. So I think another small fear was that we would alienate people with some of our messages, but it seems to have been doing pretty good.
Well, I mean, from my experience with your podcast, I would say it's not so much about the views or this or that. It actually comes down to the human experience, right? We're all people at the end of the day, and we all go through things that unite us, good or bad. And that's what you can get from it. It's going into those stories of what it's like to live on this earth right now. And people experience similar things no matter what their views are, right? So yeah,
exactly.
I think it's special. But
thank you.
Well, it's funny, like thinking back to our conversation before, and Laura, you mentioned that you are the tech person for your podcast.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's supposed to fall into my lap. Yes.
Well, on that note, was there something you wish you knew before you started your podcast journey?
Oh my gosh, how much work it is. How much just listening, editing. I mean, I'm sure there's many. When you listen to a podcast from, one of my favorite podcasts is Armchair Expert, and you listen to Dax and Monica, and they're, have all these different segments. Now they've got all these different shows. You don't think about, like, obviously they've got like people that do this stuff for that take that audio and then edit it. No, we don't have that. It's us. And so I think it was a good thing because it's like so awesome and empowering to learn how to do it. But, I think we tried. Well, first we did Zoom with, and
we started with a producer. We started with someone who edited everything for us and took care of all that. But then, we
were spoiled at the beginning.
Yeah. And then there's that's a full-time moment. And, he booked a big job and we had to start doing it ourselves. So, I don't know. Laura's very, very resorseful and can learn pretty much kind of a Renaissance woman in that way. All of a sudden I'll call her and she'll be like, oh, I figured it out. I Googled it and I figured it out.
Yes, I'm a bit of a detective. But we went through like Zoom, people using their own phones to record their audio because it wasn't great when you did it, just over Zoom. We did Riverside as one of our platforms, which is fine. But ultimately, we finally kind of found our home on StreamYard. But it took a lot. We went through editors. We went through all this until we finally found We Edit. And I was like, guys, this is our savior, please. Yes. So yeah, I'd say that you guys were a huge help. I wish I had known about We Edit before we started. In the beginning,
I know. That would have been really, really, really helpful in the beginning.
Yeah. And I mean, it's tough when you have to make that switch. If you got this producer and then it's like leaving you in the lurch when they're gone because it takes a big hole in the process, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I think it was also one of those things where I at least am very determined. I will figure out the way to do it, but I will spend entirely too much time doing that. And then, it hopefully it shows in the like how our ultimate product is. But I think a lot of people look at podcasts and they're just like, well, you got a mic, you've got a platform. What else do you need? And it's like, no, you need time, you need effort, like, especially when it comes to marketing, doing all the materials for that, cross promotion.
When we were going into that was another thing we had to figure out what our brand was. We had to figure out, people have to understand, oh, this is mental health. Yes. Oh, this is what I have, So we went to a company called Gold Toast, and they sort of came up with we told them our ideas. We came up with them. They gave us these exercises that we needed to, go and create a mood board and sort of what our vibe collectively was. And then from that mood board and those colors, they took that and then came up with our logos and whatever we did. Laura flew out to LA. We shot with Bradford Roan, who is an incredible celebrity photographer, and he did all of our promotional materials. And
that was a highlight for sure.
It was really cool. And so then, once we had that, and Laura, from the stuff that Gold Toast created, Laura was able to create a media packet, because she also has a background in marketing as well. So thank God. So we sort of have, used all these different, companies and people to sort of help us. But at the end of the day, it finally, when it was all finally said and done, we were like, oh, that's us. That's our brand. And then it just sort of, once you have the brand and you're able to sort of go forward with that brand, like Laura, we come up with these like quotes, and our quotes is sort of what's getting a lot of traction, which brings the people to the podcast. So that's sort of been Laura. That was Laura's brainchild as a marketer. So thank you very much for that. But it's been very, very helpful in our growth on social media. Like when we hit 10,000 followers, I was like, oh my God, we made it. No,
I know. Todd just declared us just successful. It's done. It doesn't matter.
We're done. No, we're going to keep going, but I can safely say we're pretty much growing 1,000 followers a month. Wow. Like that's sort of the trajectory right now.
Well, I can testify to your quotes because that's the thing that catches my attention every time. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, and then you go into the rabbit hole of seeing what else you guys did that week. And so
we also got a lot of people from the Bravo, because we interviewed one of the Real Housewives of Orange County, Dr. Jennifer Armstrong. And that was, when you tap into these different markets, everybody has trauma. Everybody's been through, I hate to say it, everybody's childhoods were, I would not met one person yet that's been like, it was perfect. I have no trauma. Everyone was amazing in my childhood. No, that's not the beat. Everyone has something that they want to get off of their chest that they didn't feel seen or they didn't feel heard. And so we're here to, let them open up about that. Yeah. And it does help people. That's the main thing about our brand. But, I wish we had agreed how much work and time and energy. But I'll tell you this, anyone who's going to go into doing a podcast, it is a labor of love. You have to love it. You have to want to get the message out. You have to, because there are days, I think Laura called me once. She's like, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. And I was like, bitch, me either. we are at a moment where this is not it. But then you move past that and you forge ahead. And I'm proud of us. We really work hard on this product, and it's also cathartic for us. So
Well, I just think about it now too. It's the hard work, and because it's such hard work, it's because you want to create something that you're proud of. I mean, at the end of the day, if you really wanted to, you could just sit here, have no video, have nothing, nobody editing it, and just publish it. And that's fine if you wanted to do it that way. It's funny. I've been reading into like the history of podcasts and like the debate about who actually started the first one. And a lot of people refer back to Robin Williams as being the one who started it. Yes. So it's just such like the center of it all is like entertainment and sharing stories. And I mean, for him, it must have just been like, he just sat down, started recording. Cause I mean, they just had like recording devices back then, and he just put it out, and it's just like, let it be out there in the universe. And we get so caught up sometimes in the production of it all that it should be, it's still a labor of love, but we have to cut ourselves some credit. Like, I mean, we're just trying to put out something that we're proud of, and it's okay if it is a lot of hard work, because that's what you're getting at the end. That product is what you're working for.
Exactly. So, but I will say you've cut our work in half.
Hey.
we Edit Podcast has definitely made it easier for us.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, they've cut my work in half too. So I feel my own team is doing a great job.
And now you've sent me down a rabbit hole that I'm definitely going to look into this history of the podcasting, because I guess I always assumed it was just, radio then turned into podcasting, but I'm sure there's a whole
there's a whole story.
A whole background to it. Yeah, cool.
No, it's so fun to see. But speaking of your story again, this has been already so great. I'm like, tell me more. But how did you decide on, the guests that you wanted to bring onto your show? Because I know because mental health is such a helpful topic to cover, but it can be heavy. It can be kind of, you never know what you're going to get out of that person. So how do you kind of gauge which guests will resonate with your audience and make sure that you've, selected the right ones to come on your show?
Laura and I we'll get together once a year, and we'll make she has a giant whiteboard, and we'll make a list of our wish list of, like, if in a perfect world, who could we interview? And, we'll still strive for them every year. And when we get to where we want to be, hopefully those people will come on, no problem. But you have to go through publicists and agents and all this stuff when you're dealing with really, really high profile people. But we make a list of wish lists, and then we go to our, people we know, or people that know people that have suggested to us. We also are on Matchmaker, a site where it will match our brand with somebody who might be good for it, and then they'll write to us and say, we think we would be good for your brand. My story. We've read some crazy shit. People have been through it.
It's almost, I won't say it's easy to find the perfect guest. It's like, I think at the end of the day, we just know that no matter who we talk to it has been through something, whether that's going to resonate with other people or not, that's where we kind of narrow it down. But I think that ultimately in the beginning, we really wanted to go with people we knew, like friends or Tina, I felt like I knew her even though I didn't know her, but that people that we knew had a message, and those were really powerful messages. And so we've done a lot of like picking people based on what they are focused on. But then there's sometimes these people that kind of come out of left field that are like, just have these incredible stories. And you're like, okay, we've got to get this person on. Like, we've got to get, and we like to just mix it up. We like it to be, to have, we had Tyler on, and then we had on,
Tyler Whitman from $1 Million Listing. Yeah. Had Tyler Whitman on.
And then, after that had, probably like one of our buddies. It's not, we don't like to be highfalutin about it. Like we want the everyday people, the people out there that, the high profile people, and as well as experts in the field. Yeah. And so that's a big thing too. We really like to focus doctors, therapists, people that, objectively have, some experience in all of this, because we're obviously not therapists, but that they also, even those people have stuff they've been through. And so that's kind of interesting to unravel.
We interviewed a therapist. He's called the therapist, I think the neighborhood therapist, Omar Torres. Yeah. Yes. We interviewed him, and we were like, what is it like in a relationship as a therapist? And he said, I don't have any problems. Everything is wonderful. So, he's like, no, it's I can tell people all day what to do, but I'm still a human being, and I still have thoughts and feelings, and I might know how to tell someone else to deal with them. But when you have to deal with it yourself, it's a different beat.
Yeah. And obviously getting people like, Dr. Jen, Willem, Cullen, Moss, all these people that are pretty objectively famous. Yeah. All credit goes to Todd because he lives in that world. Yeah. But it definitely helps to get the word out. I think it also really helps for people to hear that it's not just perfect at the top, that's not how this world works.
Yeah.
So at least that's what we hope that is going on with our message. But, you know, we really just want people, we pick guests based on how compelling we think their story is, but also how much important their message is. So that's kind of
But I love it because it's super well-rounded. It's you getting the perspectives of everybody, but also those doctors and experts is great because especially during COVID time, I mean, everybody had a platform, so everybody could say whatever they wanted to. So to back
and did.
Oh, and did. Exactly. And so many naive people fell for all these things that were said out there. It's like, oh, but I saw it on YouTube, so it must be true. Okay, no.
Oh, God,
check yourself there. So it's just great to have that, you know, expertise backing up everything that's been said and helping people in the right direction and not just
we
leading
wanted
them astray.
legitimacy. We wanted the legitimacy of people that knew what the hell they were talking about, not just our own experiences and people that have been through experiences. But a lot of people talk about their experiences in therapy. And so it's sort of like people get to hear therapists from all over the world, their interpretation of their lives, and then they share it with us, and then it gets shared with the world. So it's very rewarding.
Yeah, for sure.
When you are finding these unexpected benefits and things from your show, do you still look at metrics to say, okay, this episode did resonate, this one didn't? Or how do you guys approach your statistics like that?
For sure. We definitely still look at, I'd say just downloads is very important. I don't want to trample on anybody's name or whatever, but our platform is great. It unfortunately does not have the best analytics, which has been very frustrating as somebody in the podcast world. That's kind of what you live on. It's like, I don't have no idea what, other than getting feedback from our friends and family who are like, oh, I love that episode. That was so great. But, some of them are like, well, that one was meh. And it's like, but somebody else may have really loved it. Either way, you have to, for us, it's going into the back of Apple Podcasts, the back of Spotify, seeing what all that is, but it's always changing, which drives me bananas of how they measure stuff. Like, one may measure listeners while one is measuring downloads, one may have subscribe, one has follow. So it's kind of like, for the most part, we look at if one stood out a lot more than others. And, I'd say it really it can matter what time of year it came out. It can matter, obviously the celebrity of somebody will bolster it. But it's one thing is we definitely measure the metrics. I try not to measure them right away. Like I don't, because if I were in a way, what we use is it actually doesn't give you metrics for that week. It will wait till the following week, which has made me more patient. And then therefore I really look at an episode like a month later, like how well has it done a month later? Because then some people go in order and listen to every episode. They may not get to that one, or some people are just looking for that certain topic. And come upon it. And, like narcissism has been a big one for us. And so that's something that, I kind of will go through and say, okay, well, these are the top 3 kind of concepts that have really resonated with people. We've brought people back that we, especially like therapists, that we feel like, had a very impactful first episode. But I try not to, and I hope Todd doesn't either. But I feel bad I'm speaking for him. But that it's if we are continuing to grow, that's what's important to me. Like not that it's exploding or whatever. Just kind of what Joe said. It was like he said something along the lines of basically do 1,000 episodes before you make any big decisions. Like Joe Rogan didn't do 100 episodes and then get this like entire deal with Red Bull or whoever it was. It was like, that was 100,000 episodes later. I have no idea how many he's done, but must be just days and weeks and years. And so, we do measure those things, but I try not to get caught up in them because it really can change and you don't know which ones are necessarily always accurate.
And exactly. And like she said, like when we do have celebrities on, obviously they have a higher platform. So when they share our stuff on their platform, we get more engagement. It's kind of weird because we're trying to walk that line of, we're hoping this helps someone while also trying to sort of run a podcast business. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to find that happy medium where the content speaks for itself, but also we have to promote it in a way that's going to be enticing for someone to listen. Because what we've also learned, I mean, I guess I always knew this, but people's attention spans are very, 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 very short. So we have to find the right clickbait in order to like we interviewed Johnny Shio, who is Greg Louganis's the best diver in the world, his ex-husband, and about their marriage and everything. And we had I think 12,000 views on his one video that we made. But in another thing, we'll have 100 listens. So it just depends on what's going to resonate with who, when, what time of day it came out. All of those things do play a part in it. And we found when you release Tuesday early in the morning, it gets the most engagement.
I did a lot of very interesting research before we started. And I was like, Tuesday at 5 a.m. That's the day. That's the time. I don't know why. I don't know who's doing what at 5 a.m., but...
Oh man. So it can be in their Spotify lined up for the drive or whatever. And depending on what side of the coast you're on, 5 a.m. is good for that side.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an interesting part with marketing too, of trying to get it out on social media. There's all these I'm used to, because I have this background in building social media brands. You release them on Tuesdays and special everything you want to get out Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 o'clock or 4:30 before people are getting off work, or 10 a.m. That's about when they they lose interest in their jobs and then they want to look at social media. But that's totally different when you're dealing with a West Coast. Me posting at 5 makes no difference. There are different times. So it's a lot of playing around with what may or may not work. And so the metrics have been tricky. I would say, honestly, just as I said before, as long as we're growing, I'm happy. Yeah. So.
Yeah, as long as our followership keeps going up, our listenership keeps going up, we feel like we're succeeding.
Yeah.
And we get that feedback from people that were like, that episode really changed my life, which we do get that. And that's amazing.
And it's probably almost more valuable than another follower in the end.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I love that point of view, because the same thing goes for when you're writing a newsletter or a blog post or putting something out. Everybody isn't going to listen all at once. You're actually speaking to that one listener who's just tuned in, or that one person who just opened their email. So if you're writing to one person or talking to one person, that's what you're after in the end. So
exactly. Yeah.
We also try to create when we interview people, we try to create a very warm, positive, welcoming environment. And we've been told multiple times that people feel that they can just open up to us because of the environment we try to create over, StreamYard. So I'm very proud of that, because what people are sharing is sometimes very, very toxic stuff that's happened in their lives, or very triggering stuff, or I hate that word, but just very stuff that is not easy to talk about.
Yeah.
And your focus is on the hope that you're always talking about, hope and looking forward and turning the page. So it's not about sitting in that space. It's about finding a way through and forward. So I love that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's also a really awesome aspect of the podcast is it's also taught us so many things. I mean, that we leave usually crying at some point. Some of these people we have on, and then we talk for another hour and a half, and they'll do we've had some mediums and stuff on that do readings for us. And we're just that was so nuts, or that was so mind expanding. And, I feel really lucky that we get to do that we get to speak to these people and learn those things. And I don't even think they realize kind of how much of an impact they have on us just as podcast hosts.
Yeah.
But
we interviewed Frank Mink. I think I told you this off air. We interviewed Frank Mink, who's the former head of the neo-Nazi movement, about his trauma and finding spiritual enlightenment in prison and ending his own racist beliefs when he befriended another black inmate. And then he found out later, from genealogy that he was in fact Jewish. Wow. So we have, and the listening to what, because he was charged with kidnapping, with assault, and American History X is loosely based on his life. So the things that he was telling us in that episode, which I encourage all of your listeners to go listen to that episode, Frank Mink, Laura and I got off of that call. We didn't film the intro or outro, which is what we normally do. We had to take the afternoon because we were so shaken up by the things that were coming out of his mouth. And then we were able to come back to it a couple days later. But in that moment, she and I, we were crying so hard and just couldn't believe that a human being could go through that much heartbreak, sadness. It's stuff that's scary, dangerous, So
and then come out like on the other side.
On the other side.
Like, so he, that weekend, he was basically telling his synagogue his history because he hadn't done that yet. Yeah. And it was a very emotional experience. And that's really what we want to focus on, is that the next steps, not like, oh, here are problems. Everybody knows there's problems out there. We're trying to give you at least some solutions, at least some examples of people that have been in the worst case scenarios, and then how they managed to get out of that and how that can help us. And that is why I think we're so lucky that it does feel very like niche-y, but we can expand that to talking to politicians who are trying to make change as to the collective, to people, the activists that are just trying to get their message out there. And that is, it's really, I don't know, it gives us a lot of room, and it's very special to be a part of it.
Yeah. And again, I commend you guys, because it's deep work that you're doing. It's just like mind blowing actually what people go through, but it's so positive to know that it is possible to get through to the other side. There is that possibility. It's not the end. There's something next for you. And just being able to share that with people. And that's amazing. Which at the same time, like, you guys are doing these incredible interviews, these like vulnerable topics. So then what is your approach to the whole thing about monetization? I know you said earlier that you have a plan. So I just want you to share with listeners, how do you approach this? How do you pivot, realign, do what you need to do when it comes to the topic of monetization?
Yeah. So we started out with we had some sponsors in the beginning. They were pretty closely connected to ourselves, such as my restaurant. But, in the beginning, and it was exciting, it kind of taught us like, okay, well, even reaching out to other people, making kind of a very like good pitch, media kit, that all of that for sponsors in particular, that, kind of taught us how we want to go about it. But after like initially doing it, we were kind of like, okay, well, this is just the same kind of thing over and over again. It's not really going with our message. We're new. So it's not like, we're, smartless and people will just actually sit there and listen to it. So we've kind of come up with a plan of, put out as much content as we can, with the goal of, once we have Todd's number of 100,000 followers, that then we can really reach out and get people that we know that the message itself in particular very much resonates with. So then we can actually choose like, okay, based on this kind of episode, on this kind of, if we're focusing on veterans and PTSD, then, we're going to use, we want to have that kind of sponsor on there. So, we've kind of been playing the long game because, as we said, it's a labor of love, but part of that is financially a labor of love until we feel like we can then grow and get that those people that are really hit the mark, instead of, as much as I love my restaurant and I will promote it as much as I'm there, I don't think that necessarily goes well with mental health discussions. So yeah, we've got a lot of exciting things that in the future, that ultimately the goal is not just to have it pay for itself, but for it to make money, so that we can therefore put that back in to the podcast and grow that, so that we have even better, more episodes, more
content. Yeah.
More content.
No, I love that. It's good. People need to know they can pivot their journey with sponsorship, with monetizing their podcast. And yeah, if you feel like that's your goal, you want to grow to something and then go out there, that's the perfect way, because it resonates with who you guys are too, as a co-host team, as what you're putting out in content, in the content world.
I think because we didn't start off in the idea to make money off of this. We just wanted to share the message of hope and trauma healing and turning the page. I think because we started off with that was our driving force. Monetization has only sort of come into the picture pretty recently, since we've been getting so many celebrities and so many higher profile people on our show. And we will get there. But I think right now we're just going to stick to our message and just get as much content out there as possible. And then bring on more people to sort of, share if there's I think we could, reach out to people like BetterHelp and just different therapy, networks that would want to get their message out as well, in between our talks.
Yeah. And we do like to help others that are new and starting their own thing. I mean, we cross promote. We had these lovely ladies from Soul Rising, which is another podcast. Their names are Amanda and Jenny, and had them on, and it was
amazing.
It was amazing. I would say the initial idea is okay, well, let's just try to bolster both of our podcasts, but that combo ended up being one of the most amazing.
It just came out last week too. It was very good. Yeah. Listening back to that. Well, we were just what their perspective and what they have been through, because they're both in AA, and they both have experienced a tremendous amount of loss within a very small period of time. So I agree, Laura, that conversation was surprisingly so fulfilling, but I learned so much. I mean, Amanda's written a book, several books, but people should definitely check that out.
The kind of the idea is, even when we go into something like this is for our brand and this is to promote it, it inevitably turns into, oh my gosh, this is so enlightening, and that is more rewarding than anything else. So not to say that we won't happily accept money, guys. Just
yes, absolutely. If you want to come and be a part of Next Page Podcast, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
I love it. Oh, well, it's been so great to hear your story about your podcast. And I feel like now we should just have a little bit of fun doing some quick fire questions and just see what pops to mind. First one.
Into it. Let's go.
Let's do it. How has podcasting changed the way you do business and life?
For me, probably trying to figure out time management. just plotting out my actual day, because I know it's going to take a chunk.
Yeah, true. That's really good. Yeah, that's really, really good. Mine would probably be, it's made me more patient with humans doing this podcast.
Wow. Way to really oh my God. It's fine. No, it's a great answer. I've just found enlightenment.
No, you know what I mean? It has made me more, it's made me more, I would say it's made me a little bit more present, because I until I started doing this podcast, I've heard it said, that somebody's always going through something you have no idea about. But because we do this podcast, I'm reminded weekly, people are going through so much you have no idea.
Yeah.
Not to be I have found the way,
No, I agree. It was a really good answer. I just am sad it wasn't mine.
Stop.
Well, Laura, this is your next one. You're the tip person. What are your top 3 tools or one of the non-negotiable investments for your podcast?
Okay. I would say we edit for sure. A good sound system in general, or just a good mic, good, all of that. And I think, Todd's probably up there. I think I need Todd as part of this.
Non-negotiable.
But yeah, non-negotiable. But no, I think it's like good content, like not settling for just any old, not that everybody doesn't have a story, but that like that powerful one.
Yes.
Okay.
I concur.
You don't want to
literally no. It's the gotta have you. Gotta have non-negotiable is finding guests that are going to
make us
cry. No, that have. There's always something else to say about mental health, and different viewpoints, different angles of that can click for different people in our audience. So I think that a non-negotiable for me is really, we spend a lot of time curating our guest profile. And, I think that that's still non-negotiable for me. We still will always be very, very selective about the people we have on our show, just because we want it to be a reflection of our message.
Oh, love it. I mean, you guys have had a lot of successful episodes, amazing guests, but what was a podcast fail or a big learning moment for you guys?
There's been a few. Most of them have to do with the guest audio. One in particular that really comes to mind is, which one are you going to do? I can see.
I was going to say where she had to leave her apartment because they started doing construction. Then she went to her car. Then the service wasn't good. Dr.
Lisa Smith.
Yes.
So she was talking about a very important topic. It's still a great episode. Everybody needs to go listen to it. But she's talking about, sexual assault. And this poor woman, she's sitting there and all of a sudden we just hear drilling. Oh, no. And she's like, is that okay? And we're like, not really. And then
so she's like, the vibe of what you're talking about.
And we're like, can you go to another room? She's like, it's everywhere. And so then she goes to her car. And then she's kind of barely connected to the internet. And it was just it was painful. And then a very close second would be Laura Heim / Laura Lux with Glitter and Glass that we just started using StreamYard. And it was taking forever for her to load her audio. So we just made her leave, we're like, just leave your laptop open and go about your life and we'll just hopefully get this. So it's usually technical. So that, I guess,
agreed. 150%. It's mostly always technical. Yeah. There was if there's a fail, I think if there was maybe we've had one or two, I would call them duds as guests. We thought they were going to be really, really impactful, but it was just not as exciting as we wanted it to be, or not as fulfilling of an interview, but there was still something learned. But I don't think that they're failures, but there's been a couple that we've gotten off the phone and we're like, wow, that I don't know if that's gonna, but then you listen back and you're like, oh, there are a couple good nuggets in here.
Yeah. I was going to say at the moment it's a little different than when you listen back to it. Cause it's, it could be how we feel that day.
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly.
And I mean, also the caliber of your episodes is so high all the time that it can be kind of takes you off guard when it's not as intense or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
100%.
So your 100%. gauge is a bit off when things are normal.
Exactly. Very true.
Okay. Now for the final one, this is really fun. If money or time were not a factor, what would be next for your podcast?
Okay. Todd, yes, you're raising your hand.
Press. I would generate so much press. I would put up billboards. I would do ads.
That's definitely something you do.
I would do ads on other people's things. I would be on the side of buses. We would try to get the next page, moment out there. I think, articles.
Be on the side of the road, just
side of the road,
signs that rotates.
No, but I definitely think it would be putting a ton of money and resources into press and to hiring kind of a full team to do all of the marketing and an assistant. Yeah. Someone who would do all of the, I don't want to say grunt work, but there's a lot of that goes before we even send it to We Edit. We have to sort of pre-edit it ourselves and know what we want to take out. If a guest says, oh, I don't want please don't. That's the beautiful thing about people that are listening that are wanting to do a podcast. When you have guests, we always create an environment where because they're talking about something so personal, if they end up talking about something and then after the interview, they're like, oh, I really shouldn't have said that about my mother, or I really shouldn't have said that about my rapist, or whatever it is that we're talking about, they have the opportunity to tell us, please take that out. We're not, we're not here to
expose anyone.
anyone. We always tell people, like, this is not a gotcha interview. We're not trying to get like the juiciest thing. Right. We just want you to be authentic. And I think that that's also a big thing, is that it would be awesome to not only have a team, but a team that like literally shares our brain, that like knows what should and shouldn't stay and sees the full mission. So that would be my wish too, as well as buses that say next page podcast.
But I feel like that's doable, because it seems like you could put a podcast on there. Well, yeah, you guys will look great on a bus. I think so.
Yeah, I know. Well, we need a new photo shoot. I'm excited for. I just want to go out and do that experience. But yes, it's like it. I think our biggest thing is just wanting to get it out there, that people can listen and feel less alone, maybe even discover some things about themselves, and, look within. I think a lot of people right now are just angry and frustrated and feel alone. And so they go to the internet with a bunch of other angry, frustrated people, and then they all get whipped into a frenzy. So let's just, trying to bring the message of peace and hope and harmony.
Yeah.
I agree.
Agreed. Concur.
Agreed. Oh, well, it's been incredible talking to you guys, and I just can't wait to see where you end up next. And I will be watching some buses that go by.
Get on the lookout.
You wait. You don't, don't threaten us with a good time. We will make that happen.
We'll see what the pricing is in Canada. Maybe it's better. We should just do it up there.
Everything's expensive here.
Okay, never mind. Mexico. Yeah.
Mexico. Yes.
Wow, the airport shuttles to all the places.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, now we're talking.
Yeah.
A banner when people are on the beach, you see those banners go by. Will you marry me? We'll just put next page podcast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, is there anything else you wanted to share with our listeners in their podcasting journey or advice that you want to leave them with today?
I would say just to be true to yourself and know that when you go into this, it is very, very fun. We have a lot of fun. Even though we're talking about serious stuff, we do have a lot of fun. We have a lot of memories that we're creating. But I would say just be true, be authentically 100% yourself, because that is what's going to resonate with your listeners. Yes. And if you do have a co-host, find someone who shares your vision, but if you are going to do it by yourself, I would say educate yourself as much as possible. Listen to this podcast, listen to other podcasts where they've interviewed other people who have started podcasts. Like, there's so much information out on the internet that you can do this and you should do this, Yeah.
So. Yeah. I think that's really, really great advice. And I would add to that, it's okay to pivot. Like you said, it's okay to that you don't have to do every episode like you did your first episode. You can, come up with a different kind of vibe if you want, a different way of promotion, that kind of stuff. I mean, I definitely want to always stay true to what we're doing, but that doesn't mean that, we can't experiment with, something else that's not working. Don't give up. Yeah. Don't give up because don't give up because you're going to face a bunch of really annoying roadblocks. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just kind of part of the hazing experience of getting into a podcast.
It's all part of the journey.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of now at this point, it's kind of it does get to be a well-oiled machine, in a sense, where the interviews are all different, but the process of getting it to We Edit to getting it to air, it's kind of seamless now. Like, we have our templates, we have our brand ready to go.
Mm-hmm. We have our groove.
a groove. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can focus on all the fun things.
Exactly.
Oh, well, Laura, Todd, thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing so openly and honestly with our listeners and encouraging them on their journey as podcasters.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
I know. Thank you so much for having us. This has been such an honor. It's exciting.
100%.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next time.